Here's I thought I'd throw some humor into this, so I thought I'd show you how we zoned the heritage. As you can see, this is a very old presentation because it didn't have a name yet. It was called Millennium Park Tower. And by the time we got ready to name the building, at least 2 other people had called their buildings Millennium, so we didn't. But anyway, that was our site, right behind the Cultural Center. This drawing seriously tried to talk about the layering that's going on around the park. And here you have Randolph, and you have all tall buildings. Here you have the Michigan Avenue wall, which is a very low layer, and behind that you have the Wabash wall, which is a much higher wall. So, what we were trying to say is you can't look at what's going on in Millennium Park without thinking about what's going on behind Millennium Park. And you have the tallest buildings in the city of Chicago. Prudential for 30 years was the tallest building in the park. In the city. Aon Tower, or whatever it's called these days, was the 3rd tallest building in the world for a little bit while. So we talked about that, and then we pointed out that, again, here's these buildings, that what we were going to try to do with the heritage was create the elbow or the turn between what was going on here and then what was going on here. So our lower level at 27 stories right there is exactly the height of all the buildings, the average of the buildings running down Wabash until you get to the 55 East Monroe building, I think. And then up here we were 500. We were about 620 feet, which is just about 20 feet higher than the Smurfit building. So we prevailed that what we were really doing was making sense out of taking Randolph and actually connecting it to Michigan Avenue, and that's what we have today. This is what the legacy will look like. And when it's completed, it's 72 stories tall. Amazingly, it's only 66 feet wide at the front here, 66 feet 6 inches, and the back of it is only 120 feet wide, 130 feet wide, I'm sorry. So it forms like a triangle, and the city, really does like the idea of tall and thin, as do I. No, tall and thin as opposed to short and squat. And, because if everything was limited with the FAR we have in the city, if everything was limited to 40 or 50 stories, what you'd end up with is a solid 50-story wall running right down Wabash or whatever street you wanted to run it down. Because you can't run it down Michigan Avenue, I hope, forever. So tall and thin is better because it allows all these view corridors and all the light and the connection between the lake and Michigan Avenue and the rest of the city. So we're all for that idea. And here's another view of it. And you may recall that our building connects. This is the University Club right here, and our building has a bridge at the 12th story to the University Club. And again, what we were trying to do there was provide the services of hotel condominiums without the cost. So you can either choose to join the University Club and get the benefits of the club, or choose not to, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. There's no assessments or anything. So that's what we were trying to do there. Ed, this is a picture of your park from about the 40th floor of our new building, and that's from the 70th floor. And I think that's a pretty cool photo. Now, we've already sold the penthouse, but the building, the unit right below it's available. So you can get this view for $1.50 or more. What's neat about this, by the way, is you can't fly helicopters in the city of Chicago any longer after 9/11. So these photos were all taken from a balloon. They actually took a balloon and put it 750 feet up in the air with a camera hanging from it, and took all these photos, which we used. I am seriously proud of this particular shot because there aren't. It's also the beauty of working in the city of Chicago is that a guy that went to school in Indiana and could come to the city and during his lifetime have a dramatic effect on the city, like the heritage and the legacy when it's done. And that's a great thing to happen in America. That's a great thing to happen in our city. Now, we've talked a lot about Millennium Park, so now I'm going to tell you what we did for Millennium Park as opposed to what you did for us. We tried to make a calculation, and there's some people in the building in the room right now that know a lot more about these calculations than we do. But quite seriously, we said that, this is the heritage. Tax growth rate of 3%, city borrows at 4.5%. The value per square foot of the heritage was about $500 on average we sold out for. And so over 23 years, making this calculation, the heritage will produce $174 million in real estate taxes. On a present value basis, $101 million. Just note here that we have 120,000 feet of retail, so there's a big retail column in here that produces. So even though it's $500 a foot, with the retail, we produce 174 million. The legacy, which we're going to sell out at in excess of $600 a foot for, almost identically produces $174 million of real estate tax also. So the two buildings combined will produce $349 million of real estate taxes. And now that's just two buildings. So if you want to talk about the vision of the mayor and what the park is all about, and in turn, I mean it's a terrific partnership. We would not have built the buildings without the park, but I think in turn the success of the park has allowed us to build the buildings, and we in turn are paying for the park. So I don't think you can go wrong with that kind of a thing. So on a gross basis, $349 million of real estate tax, and on a net basis, $202 million. And I told Louis this morning when we were having our coffee and planning rigorously for this presentation that we should just tell everybody that he and I paid for the park. And that you should we'll accept that applause because then there's one more thing that I thought was really pretty interesting, and we were just seriously playing games getting ready for tonight, and we thought to ourselves, well, what do we, and I know Christine and others in the crowd, this is a real amateur job I'm doing here, and I'll admit it readily, but we said, what could the purchasing power be of the people who live in the two buildings? And so what we said again is one building at 5, one at 6, average square foot, what the buildings average, 800,000, units averaging 800,000 or a million. What's your payment? What's your assessment? What's your implied household income? Multiplied by 12. And we decided, and we will refute it, we will not accept it, whatever, I don't even know. We decided that we're bringing $167 million of disposable income to the loop annually. And now, we know they won't all spend it here. But I mean, quite seriously, if you think about it, all the theaters, all the clubs, all the restaurants, all the new services, not only are there all the grocery stores, and by the way, when people came into the Heritage and asked us where they could shop, my standard comment was, don't worry, I've never known anybody that starved to death in the city of Chicago. You will find food. And then I asked you, did you ever in your life walk to the grocery store when you lived in, Glencoe? In fact, some of them, where the grocery store is in Glencoe. But this $167 million will, we've just already proven we paid for the park. But now we want thanks from all the restaurants and everything in the city for the wonderful things we've done for the restaurants and all the service organizations in the city of Chicago. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.